So good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, rather. Welcome to this consultation on the development of a track and field facility in Anguilla. We still have some persons filing in, and in relation to our panel, we're missing one person, but that person will soon be with us. But thank you for tuning in on Facebook Live. Those who have come in person, we appreciate your presence. And I'll ask Mr. Sheldon John to, it's not as yet? Vaughn, is it active? Okay, so we're gonna continue, restart. Had some slight technical issues. So just to start with a prayer, I want to open with a prayer. I'd like to ask Mr. Sheldon John if he could open us in a word of prayer. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. If we can all stand, please. Father, we want to thank you for being here this evening, Father, as we come to you to see more inside of your heart and what you have for Anguilla, Lord. As we discuss, as things are laid out and explained, Father, we pray for a real strong sense of cooperation from those who are online and those who would hear about this meeting after, Father. We thank you that your will, your purpose will find a place in each heart here this evening and in each voice that would be lifted up. So God, we appreciate everything that you do and say. And as we look forward to this meeting being fruitful and productive, God, we pray that this will go with us for years and for years. So we pray this in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So in relation to this evening's discussion, we're going to break it down from the situational analysis, where we are, why we're here, what is being proposed, and to go forward from there. From the last time we had a discussion, which would have been late last year, we had a national consultation on the development of a track and field facility. At that time, we would have had a different location in mind, which would have been the long ground site. Most persons would have known about the development at that particular site. However, we were not able to progress with development at that site, and we therefore asked the Department of Planning to make an assessment of areas centrally located for the development of a track and field facility. They would have done an assessment and shared it with Cabinet and Executive Council. And from that process, we would have ranked the options and chosen the most favorable one for the development. Now, the process by which we are currently engaged is through a call for applications called Project 10, which was sent out by World Athletics early September of this year. The call for applications really came from the partnership between the Qatar Olympic Committee, which through its partnership with World Athletics for the 2019 bid, their legacy commitment was the installation of 10 tracks across the globe. And so they asked all member federations, and I see the president, I don't know why the president is going into the gallery rather than on the panel, as she should be. Yes. That's okay. To submit applications for either a new facility or to relay a track at an existing facility. Of course, due to the two categories, Anguilla would really technically only be able to apply for a new facility because our current facility is shared with a number of other sporting disciplines. So the member federation, the World Athletics in partnership, they sent it out to member federations such as the Anguilla Amateur Athletic Association, the president who is here by my side. Actually, I must apologize. I did not introduce the panel members with me this evening. So I'm going to do that at this moment. I have to my left my permanent secretary, Dr. Bonnie Richardson-Lake, and to my right, I have the president of the Anguilla Amateur Athletic Association, Ms. Lorna Rogers. We are also still awaiting the arrival of the director of sports. But nonetheless, we'll try to keep this meeting as succinct as possible. So that was the application that was the application that was opened, and Anguilla would have submitted their application in November, supported by the government of Anguilla in relation to the identification of a parcel of land. So a lot of persons would have been asking what was the criteria in relation to the selection of a field and also in relation to World Athletics in the application. The application eligibility criteria, I think maybe the president can speak to that. I'll let her, you have to press this.
Good evening. I'm late, but in the circumstances, I'll just adopt the protocol that has already been established. I don't know if the minister referred to the fact that the legacy tracks that came from Qatar, this has been in the pipeline now for a number of years, perhaps over 10 years, Rollins. And over time, we have had vigorous conversations with World Athletics, from the president of World Athletics down. We've had a conversation with the president of Qatar Athletics. And I think that at some point in time, well, over time, I think they probably got fed up of us constantly begging for this track, this legacy track. I think there were 10 legacy tracks coming from Qatar. But finally, the contract was signed in April at the Carifta Games in Bahamas, and we are now waiting with bated breath on the results of the committee. Well, everything was detailed in here in the application, and we know that the committee meets sometime during the course of this month, and that there will be a press release sometime in January. We don't know the specific dates. There were 3 sections in terms of the application, and the eligibility and selection criteria. There were basically 3 sections. Criteria 1 had to do with the strategic need for a track, and there were a number of points involved in this, and this criteria carried actually 50 points out of the possible 100 points. We had to answer questions relating to the level of the existing track, the quality and the quantity of existing tracks. What was our vision and outcome? What would be our athletics competitions and the development structures? Well, obviously all of this, they're expecting that regardless to where we are at this point in time, that we will now be actually quantifying and evaluating all of this, because it must satisfy what we say in terms of our request for a track must satisfy their requirements. And in addition, how do we expect the athletic performance levels to improve? So in other words, they're now expecting, okay, you say you need a track, how many medals are you looking in the future? Of course, all of this is over time, nothing happens immediately. They're looking now at possible medals, placings and rankings of our athletes on a world basis. So that essentially was the criteria 1, which had to do obviously with the strategic need. Criteria 2 was technical, and that carried 25 points, and this in large part had to do with commitments from the government, and specifically from the Ministry of Sports, well, the minister responsible for sports. So the track that will be awarded, it's not going to be 100%, in terms of what they're giving, it's not going to be 100% complete, and therefore in terms of the other, let's say, financial requirements, we had to ask government to step in and to give an indication of what financial support they could provide in ensuring that the track would be complete. Having said that, over the years, it wasn't clear what this track would entail, but when the application came out, we were rather surprised, because somehow over the years, I don't know if Rollins would agree with me, but over the years, we were thinking that the track would be mostly just the rubber surface. But in fact, what they're giving is far more than that. So, of course, that is good, in that we would have to rely on government less rather than more. And we know what government monies are like. So I say no more on that in terms of sports. But I think that what I can say is that at this point in time, I think everything basically crystallized at the same point in terms of the application finally coming on stream, and in terms of the commitment that government was prepared to make at this point in time in ensuring that we can have all the resources available for the track. In the technical area, so, well, the evidence of support also included evidence that the land will be available, and of course this is where government came in again, and they guaranteed, they must be satisfied also that we will, when I say we, the Athletic Association, will have guaranteed access to the track. And obviously this, we would expect this to be in writing. We had to submit an ongoing maintenance plan, because obviously when the track is on stream, maintenance is an issue. So we had to provide an ongoing maintenance plan. Well, I already spoke to the financial commitment. Basically, that was the technical aspect, which was 25 points, so that's 75 points. And then criteria 3 had to do with the economic and environmental vulnerability index, whatever that is. But fortunately, whatever that was, which was 25 points, we did not have to supply any information for that, but that involved instability, well, based on what the information here, instability of exports of goods and services, victims of natural disasters, geographical constraints, share of primary sector, agriculture, forestry, and fishing in GDP, instability of agriculture, production, etc., etc., etc. But that is, they will do their own evaluation on that. We did not have to provide anything with respect to that, and that was the 100 points, and basically that was the criteria for the application. Well, I mean, we also had to speak to how many more competitions we would be looking to put on as well, if we are successful in getting the new track, and basically that was, I think that basically sums it up.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Okay, so just to give you an outline of what was offered from Project 10, for further details, the scope of work that was included was site surveying, excavation, disposal, backfilling, surface preparation, the sublaying, the drainage systems, the installation of pipes, the concrete foundation, the asphalt service, the running track, the aluminum curb, the drainage channel, the line marking, the substructure civil work, and the supply of a World Athletics Class 1 certification. What was excluded from the scope of works was in relation to costs outside. So any costs related to the new site, addressing any changing facilities, storage rooms, and equipment, maintenance, and related infrastructure. So as the president would have just said, the only way for this application to have been successful is if there was partnership between the Anguilla Amateur Athletic Association and government. So government would have had to make a commitment financially, and to substantiate that commitment to the committee before they could judge that Anguilla was actually ready, because Anguilla is technically competing with multiple other member federations for this track, and the only way for us to make our application higher on the list of success is to show that we are committed financially to ensuring that this track becomes a reality. So the government of Anguilla would be committing in the next financial year $700,000 towards the development of the changing facilities for the track and field facility, and including a sewage treatment plant. So I'll get to why those things are quite important, just for the general public's information at the moment. So we would have, as I said earlier, put out a notice for the development of land in Long Ground, which unfortunately we weren't able to go forward with. But as I said, planning did an assessment of six locations, and I think the PS can mention which 6 those are, because I don't have them immediately accessible. So planning would have done an assessment of what land would be sufficient for a track and field facility. So obviously track and field facilities take up quite a significant amount of acres, because it's quite flat and quite vast. And I believe it was roughly it's roughly 8 acres that are necessary, 8 flat areas that are necessary for the development of a track and field facility. I'll let my PS identify the areas because I don't have it in front of me. And you can give the criteria for location appraisal.
Okay, so there were several sites that were assessed. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sites that we looked at. And so we looked at things like central location. We looked at whether or not the land was flat or slanted. We looked at whether or not the land was owned by the government. Of course, that was a very important aspect. And so when we compared the 7 different sites. The site that was decided on was the site in Valley Bottom, which is centrally located, owned by the government, situated by other sports facilities. There's existing parking in the vicinity, and it's located next to our educational institutions. And there is opportunity for future development on nearby parcels. So that was deemed to be the most appropriate out of the 7 sites that were looked at. So we looked at Long Ground, as the minister mentioned. We'd have looked at the Quarter. We'd have looked at Tanglewood, Sandy Hill, Valley Bottom.
So as the PS would have noted just now, the location, the ownership actually became quite a critical factor in relation to our ability to apply for this project. As you know, we would have stated that the Project 10 deadline was December the 1st of this year, which meant that we would have had to satisfy to the committee that the land was in the ownership of government, that the athletic association would have a lease or some type of arrangement that would allow them to use it and develop it unencumbered. And a number of the sites that planning would have identified, while they would have been ideal in terms of size, they were not owned by government. And because of the ownership structures, things like, you know, the person who was on the register would have passed on, and therefore no letters of administration had been taken out, that would have lengthened the process by which we could have possibly been able to engage in any negotiations for those parcels. So those complicating factors came in, but even with the ownership issue settled, this site in the Valley Bottom still ranked higher than the other options because of its proximity to utilities and waste disposal, the accessibility, the topography. All of those things actually really helped. One of the other sites that the PS didn't mention she did mention, but you may not have known it by what she said, was the Quarter site east, the Quarter site east. So it would have been at where the current school is located, the campus Q as they call it. There was an area to the west of the school, sitting west, that's clear, that's on a slope, a little incline. That area was looked at and earmarked for the development of a track and field facility, but the area is insufficient. In fact, the area actually goes into part of the school. So on the overlay map that you may have seen in relation to the development of a track there, when you put an actual track marked out with real dimensions, it actually eats into the school's area and into private land on the western side. So that's one side of that, but on the other side, the excavation costs for that area alone were over $7.5 million. So economically, it was not the most viable site for us to develop and even to put this application in through on. Okay, my battery just died. Yeah, so we of course, there's the question in relation to the site being on agricultural land. So part of what we had to do in relation to this development is the government had to take an assessment as to whether or not we would assign a new purpose to this particular parcel of land. So this parcel was previously earmarked as agricultural development. We did an assessment based on the type of farming that was taking place in that location, and there wasn't significant high yield farming taking place at the time of the assessment. And we identified a few farmers who were farming on approximately 0.1 of an acre on that site. And we therefore decided that, given the fact that there are alternative locations available for the farming, that we could use this particular parcel for the development of the track and field facility, with the proviso that we would make arrangements in relation to relocation. So and relocation and compensation of the farmers who are currently using that 0.1 slice of the 8.6 acres. So there was quite a number of adjustments and conversations to have, and I know that a number of persons would have raised concerns specifically around that agricultural use versus the development of a track and field. But we have been in conversations with those farmers and made arrangements in relation to their compensation and relocation. So yes, I think we've been talking for quite some time. So we will open the floor to anyone who has any questions about the development in that location.
Can you use the mic up there? No, because it's being streamed, so people want to hear the questions.
Okay, you're talking about the drainage, knowing that the valley bottom normally, what is the plan on that one?
So we would have, in the assessment done by planning, we would have basically built in mitigating, how we would mitigate against issues in that area. And one of the mitigating conditions is that we would have to build a modern water treatment plant on that site. So, sewage treatment plant on that site. And that's to ensure that we deal with the issues in relation to drainage and ensure that we are protecting the site. All of the issues that you raised were actually raised by the planning department as the particular challenges with that area, and they were satisfied that if we built a modern sewage treatment plant, we could mitigate against those issues identified.
We have a question on the live. The question is, what about sufficient parking in cases of eventual international events?
So in the, I'll go to you after, but in the outline of the plan that we have, there is a location identified specifically for parking. But additionally, we have looked at the entire the sports development in that area. So you know that on the eastern side, we have the James Ronald Webster Park where cricket is usually played, and we're looking at how we develop a comprehensive parking area for both track and field and cricket at the same time. Yeah, you can go. That was your question? Oh, okay. Mm. And now we have the director with us. So any other questions in relation to the development? You can pop them over. Do you have any more questions? So yes, just, I don't know if the president would have indicated, but we also, the results of the applications will be forthcoming early in January. So we will know where we are. And on the flip side, even if we are not successful with the application, we are still committed to developing that space.
The size of the track, are we aware what size of track we're getting? Say 8 lanes, 9 lanes, how many long jump runways or pits we'll be getting, that kind of stuff.
So it is a Class 1 track, which would be 8 lanes. There's the ability, I think there's one long jump pit that I remember being in the track, so I can't speak to any further ones. But I do know that if for international competitions at a certain standard, you also need to have a secondary track for warm-up purposes. So it would depend on what area, what level are we trying to reach, if we're trying to really reach the highest international level, or if we're catering mostly to regional competition and invitationals.
Would we still have access to the cricket area to use for warm-up?
Well, part of what we're trying to do in the separation of cricket and track and field is to allow for the independent development of each sport, because both sports have kind of been hindered by multiple sports taking place on each location. Now, there is, in the outline of the cricket, the plan for cricket, it is a little bit squatter than what we have. It's wider, so it goes a little bit into the campus A area, but it doesn't push out as far as the way you would have seen the traditional throws taking place, like shot put and javelin for the athletes. It doesn't push all the way back there. So there is some potential, but I'm going to err on the side that the sports want to develop their spaces independently of one another.
That's because you would have just mentioned warm-up areas.
Yes.
So
So I think that if we are developing in the long run, there are other locations. So if you would have been to tracks in St. Lucia or in Antigua, you would know that you actually have to travel to another location. It could be a grass track or something of that nature, but there's another location where you have to warm up, which you have to be bused to. So it's not necessary that it's going to be in the same area.
Okay, we had another question online, and then we'll go to your question. And the question is the area identified not considered a flood zone, as we would have seen the effects of Hurricane Lenny in the past? What is the plan to mitigate this issue? I think the ministry would have spoken to that briefly before.
Part of the reality is that any development in the valley area is never going to be completely free of risk for flooding. That's part of our reality. And while we want to develop, we wish to develop like separate from all of those risks, we also do have the issue of having very limited land resources. If we had unlimited land resources, then a lot of these choices would be much simpler, but we have to mitigate as far as we can and make the decision that's in the best interest of all stakeholders.
Good evening. Quick question. Would the size of the track be able to accommodate a football field? Reason being, if there's a regional or international tournament being hosted here, the field could at least be leased so that you could earn some money.
So we have had like very, very preliminary conversations about that, and it can fit a football field. And of course, there are some aspirations on the side of the Anguilla Football Association in relation to what level of competition they host in the future. So it is possible, but we won't have a definitive answer on that until after we get into the real planning stages.
Yes, good evening. My question is not a question exactly, but I want to commend the government of Anguilla, first of all, for the efforts in progressing the idea of a track for Anguilla. So my question is that in the event that the application is not successful, how soon will the land be prepared for track?
That is a good question. I think we can make some preliminary arrangements around that on our side, but we're crossing our fingers, toes, and everything else that this will be successful, and we're putting all the good energy towards it being successful, and ensuring at that point when we do figure out what the answer is, then we make alternative arrangements. That's you don't like that answer.
Well, actual fact, what I think though, in the event that we don't have the financial resources to albeit a track immediately, we can prepare the grass track in the interim here.
Well, we do, as you know, we have made capital arrangements. We've put aside financial resources specifically for the track. So if we initially intended for it to be for changing rooms, but now it has to be for clearing and developing the land, and that's what we will do.
There's another question that I think we've kind of answered, and that is when will the work on the project actually begin? Well, the work has begun. We've identified the land. We've confirmed our commitment to using it to develop the track. We've set aside capital monies to supplement what the association will be able to do, and we hope to hear in January. Correct. So it will flow from there how we roll out.
Just to follow on a bit from what the point that Rawlings was making, I think that from the association point of view, what we would really want is that we would really want to know that government is committed to giving this land for track and field, regardless to whether or not that Qatar application is successful. And therefore, as he pointed out, and as you said, you've made some provision in the budget. And if it is, we have to be satisfied for now with just having a home for track and field as opposed to a certified track. At least we would be happy with that for now, because the reality is track and field and cricket cannot coexist. Simply cannot. And our development will always be hindered. So we need that commitment that regardless.
Well, the Premier said he likes it, so we'll make that a reality. Unless in the interim we find somewhere better, but you know, you have to look very hard at this point. But of course, as both the director and the president have been saying, one of the issues in track and field is that we really haven't been able to develop out these sports independently so that our athletes have the opportunity to professionalize. So if you look at the type of training that athletes in more developed nations do, and the type of commitment that they have to the track or to the cricket pitch, it is very difficult for other sports to even try to interfere with their schedules. However, in Anguilla, we have James Ronald Webster Park that cricket uses, track and field uses, football sometimes uses, people walking around the track use. You have primary school sports, high school sports, netball, volleyball, tennis, this Anguilla Day celebrations. So there's so many uses on that particular field. It's very difficult for each and every one of those sporting disciplines to actually program a year of development. And that's actually very important for the sports. They have to be able to see this is a program we have for this year for our athletes. It's very difficult for either cricket, track and field, to really say that definitively in the circumstances that we exist in right now.
Another question online that says, is the facility designed to also host non-sporting entertainment events?
I'm assuming that they're thinking of like what the AFA has, like with the stands and the field, but I
think they'd be more like concerts and things like that.
I'll leave that to the president to say whether or not that's in their plan for recouping funds.
That is not envisaged. I mean, there are groups who can come and have sporting activities, but I don't know if this person is referring to activities such as concerts and that kind of thing. We would have to consider the damage to the lanes. Yeah, the equipment that's going to be used, because that comes with a cost. And if anything, as Vincent mentioned, yeah, you could look at earning money from football, wanting to use it, but in terms of those other activities, I can't really envisage right now that that would be a possibility.
Yes, as we all know, the design of the track is pretty standard, but the usage, they have very usage. There are other activities that may not be a sporting activity that people can use the stands for seating, but you can use the center for entertainment. So you'll sit in the stands and you view whatever's on the grounds. So the grass area in the center can be used for other activities. Yeah, that wouldn't be damaging to the track itself. Yeah.
There's also a type of material that you could also place on the field in the event that you have activities as well too. So.
Well, clearly what we would have is the development of specific and stringent guidelines for the use of the facility.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry for being late due to other situations, but I've been listening in and out, so I might miss some areas, but question and concerns is, I look at the flyer, the brochure, and I see 6 lanes 400, 5 lanes 100, and a plan, when you produce a plan, it's supposed to give a layout of the total project in terms of the spaces. I mean, 8 lanes, I'm just speaking from what I see in the drawing, because that can send about a different message. Now, I would know because of my field of work. So I can go and look at everything. So I mentioned earlier, because we had a discussion sometime earlier with the Athletic Association concerning it, and I mentioned then, I'm going to mention it again, a 10-lane track would be the ideal thing for Anguilla in terms of the primary schools are okay for the 8-lane because they have to put together the teams to be a part of. But we have 1 high school, 5 houses, where there's 2 athletes per house. And if we use the 8-lane, it means that we're going to hamper the development of, especially because that's the age we're looking at for international, region, and also world. And in that situation, my thinking of it is that We got over 1,000 plus children in the school. I mean, all is not active into the arena, but the thing about it is that if the opportunity arises, like, okay, 8 lanes, 1 per house, so I must bother try to make it because I know she at least 2 seconds better than me, so she got the first preference. So I mentioned it at that meeting, so I mentioned it here again. I was given the answer, and I mentioned where the association need to press government to provide the 2 extra lanes to the total layout. And the other concern for me, because if we're going to develop the track, it means we need to have at least pavilion in with the development at the same time. Now, I'm not looking for the whole 400, at least I'm looking from what we have on the park, the pavilion over on that end come around to the finish line, because primary school, there is packed and also the little space between in there too. And if you're looking at international or even regional, okay, it means that supporters will come in, and we would need I don't want to be underneath no tent for sure. And I don't want Rollins, who's taller than me, I gotta tell him move so he could see. So my thing about it that I understand the whole logistics of the track, but if we can press for having that completed, I think it will be in a better position than if we just have one and then preparing for the other after.
Okay, so I'll take it under advisement. I'll take it under advisement.
Yeah. Okay. As I said earlier, the design of the track has not actually been produced, but other tracks are pretty much standard, and that standardization also impacts the cost of the track. And I don't think there are certain things that we have to try to stay in line with. The other supporting structures like the pavilion and athlete holding area and storage room is so still to be determined based on the design. However, with regards to, let's say, the secondary school sports, then there's a need to have the structure of the sports altered, whereby we wouldn't just have 10 persons run the race, but you have the best persons enter the finals. So in terms of how the school sports could possibly be designed going forward, we have pre-sports day events, and so a house may have 3 persons in the finals, as opposed to each house definitely getting 2, and you're not getting the best athletes in the finals. So the design of the sports day, there's a great possibility for that to be done, to be restructured.
If I may just add something here. While I take your comment on board, and that might seem like the ideal situation, the addition of two additional lanes would come with a cost. We would have to see whether or not the 2 additional lanes would be still possible on that side. However, we also have to bear in mind that if this was a track that government was giving us, and if this was not coming from Qatar, because it's a standard certified track that they're giving, and there would be a complication for government to say, we want to add 2 lanes to what you're giving, because they are coming to give a specific track with a specific number of lanes, and for government to liaise with them and say, I'm going to fund the cost. That is not how it operates. That in terms of this particular track here, that is not how it would operate. As I said, if government was giving us the track from scratch, then that is certainly a discussion that we could put on the table. But I don't see it being viable with Qatar and world athletics. And even so, to negotiate that within the time period of the application, and for that to be worked out, I think we would not even be in for consideration of this track, to be frank. Yeah, we would be out the door.
No, I understand. It's just that I'm just looking from the perspective of developing getting them encouraged. Because if it's that is like, it won't join me, but if there's a added space where it can happen, I understand it. I just was speaking just from what I see and looking at it. In terms of, as Mr. Rollins said, for bringing in heats into the system, it's a task. I mean, we can just speak it here, but it's a task. I mean, we see how the football had to rush in to get through with their thing. I mean, we still have basketball, we still have netball, we still have volleyball competitions that still come within the high school. And we now want to work in heats for athletics. Okay, it's the same scenario like we have the park for everything else, and we really ain't getting the true value of each sector in terms of producing. But I understand, I'm just looking at, we are different in terms of our structure and uniqueness, as we always say, compared to the other, where they can, with the schools, you have more than one school that can prepare themselves and select, like how the primary schools are, because they're prepared to select their team for the day. But seeing that you just have one high school with the houses, I was just looking at it from their point of view.
You're just trying to get that as school. Just trying to get that as school.
Also, I like what Rollins said about the structure of Sports Day, because I think that it would encourage a more competitive environment as opposed to people just showing up because the house need an extra runner, so you put an extra person just for putting a person's sake. So the element of having heats and where you select the best, I think that can drive the athletes to perform at a different level as well.
And to add to this, even though this is not about the programming of track and field serviceable facility, but in terms of having meets, if you have a existing track, there'll be lights available. A 3-hour track meet is very feasible with all the amenities there, because in that way, I've seen meets in Tortola, 5 o'clock they start, 8 o'clock they finish. It's just like you may have a basketball or football competition just lasting X amount of hours, so that will be somewhat we'll be heading towards, especially with these high school meets. You go to your school in the day normal, you can have a track meet Thursday afternoon, 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock. You can come back next week Tuesday with whatever age group and do that sort of thing. We have persons performing. Those who do well go through to the final moments. Those who didn't do as well will be eliminated from the final 8 on the track. So that's programming. That's for another meeting, okay?
Question online says, the site for athletic events is really, will provisions be made to enable setting up for live streaming events a little easier? For example, fixed structures around the track for cameras and underground wiring, supplying power and data for each structure.
Yeah, that's a really good question. In all of the plans that have been being developed thus far. We've been trying as best as possible to get a multi-stakeholder perspective as to what's needed to function at highest efficiency, which would require consultation on things like the lighting, the positioning. So I don't know if you notice at the Anguilla Football Association Stadium, on the field on the eastern side, there is a scaffolding set up there for the live streaming that goes internationally. And that's a possibility in this case as well. So it would just be about which points you're setting it up on and having the necessary infrastructure. Yeah. I see the young athletes here, but I don't see them wanted to ask any questions. Are you guys curious about anything? You just,
Hi, good night, everyone. All right, I'd just like to ask, in terms of lighting, like in the facility, will there be like lighting like surrounding the track so that we could like go through meets straight from 7, 8, 9 in the night?
Yes, that's all part of the plan, to make sure that the facility has lights and is able to function in the evening tide and nighttime.
There are a couple of questions online about consideration for traffic and congestion. That was something that was considered. In fact, when we were looking at the different sites, one of the drawbacks was, despite the fact that it's centrally located, it also may create some traffic. So we will be having a think about how we mitigate some of that.
If I may, with the coming of a new facility and the possibility of hosting meets, inviting teams in, and in terms of your spectator base, the issue of traffic, yes, will arise. I don't think that we would be having a meet at the same time that football would be having a meet, and vice versa. And I would anticipate that in the interest of the development of sports, that whatever parking facilities track and field would have would be available to other sports. And whatever parking facilities other sports would have would be available likewise. We have limited resources, and each sport can't be selfish. We have to share the resources that we have. It doesn't mean that you won't have congestion if there is a big meet, but I can recall, I think, was it last year, year before, I went to which is it, football or soccer match in England. It was Aston Villa playing somebody. And where we parked, I think we walked for having parked. I think we walked for about 45 minutes to get to the stadium to see this match. At least 45 minutes. And I'm not saying that because of that, the congestion is okay, but I'm saying I can't see that happening really and truly. And you might have a little congestion, but I don't think that it would be that bad that it becomes an issue.
Additionally, there are creative solutions to deal with parking congestion. You have very clear instructions as to where people park. If you have a shuttle, all of these things are part of the planning in terms of sports. Very, very typical. So if there's a will, there's always a way. The Valley has traditionally more parking spaces than other places around Anguilla, and so these are solutions that we can put in place if it, preemptively, and to execute if there's an issue. Okay, so the time frame to get it built. If we are successful, I believe that the mobilization starts in March, end of March. I think it was March. I could be, wasn't it March? I believe I saw something. Maybe the March was in relation to the site visit, but the track itself takes approximately 6 months. The track, the base laying,
Well,
disposal, the backfilling, etc. All of that activity. I think that's about 6 months, 6 to 8 month period.
Well, if you're successful, I would anticipate by the end of next year we will be well on our way to having a track.
That's also an answer.
Hi, good evening again. I have one question, but 2 parts, and it has to do with revenue generation. Will the facility contain conference rooms, for example? Because, like in my case, for example, I have difficulty finding large rooms for rent. Will it contain rooms like that can be rented out? And the second thing that I was just wondering about, would there be boxes, like stadium would have private boxes, for example, and companies are the ones who pay for those boxes. Would that be considered as well?
You.
Well, I will answer your second question. The issue of the private boxes, that is would certainly be a revenue generating thing, and it would be good. But what I would have to say is that that would not be in the first phase, but certainly yes, a consideration. Well, in terms of the conference facilities, this is something that we have discussed from the inception. And again, this is a sit-down conversation we would have to have with the government. The association does not have the money, but yes, it is fully anticipated that we will have conference facilities. Maybe the minister might have something else to add.
Okay, our athletes have nothing to say, nothing more to say. Simon said something, but okay, another one. Okay, wow. Don't all rush at once.
All right, good evening once again. I just like to say as well, that I'm very happy for this step moving forward in track. I believe is a good step, for Anguilla in terms of track and field. We've all been waiting for this for a long time. So, yeah, it would motivate a lot of little kids and young adults to want to be more interested in trackers. Say, oh, there's a track there now. I want to participate. So, yeah, I wanted to ask concerning like vendors and those type of things. Will it be an area set up for them to also be able to sell whatever they need to sell, food and what's not?
That's an excellent question. So there are 2 options of how you would manage this. One option is the model which allows the association responsible to be able to generate revenue from basically selling whatever, materials, food or drinks or things associated. So you can have that model where you can kind of have something circular going back into the association, or you can have vendors come on site. We haven't fully fleshed that out as yet, but I'm sure that will be taken into consideration.
All right, thanks.
Or both.
Another question on that. Also about the public now, in terms of the different tiers of pricing, you don't have to pay to go inside a venue for this. Right now it's fairly cheap, but will it be more, because now it's going to be proper track and things, like would people have to pay more for that, or would it depend on the type of meet that's been held?
Well, I'll let the president answer that one.
Well, yes, it will depend on the type of meet, because we are anticipating that we will be hosting more regional meets. So it does depend on that, but we're also hoping that with the facility, we would be able to generate more revenue as well. So it's not as if we'll be looking to kill the public with increased entrance fees, but yes, there will be maintenance of the track, and we have to take that into consideration. We have to have sources of funds to maintain our beautiful track when it comes. So possibly yes.
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, good night. Everybody a little tense tonight, man. Laugh, smile, what's going on here? All right, so my question concerns about, I would say, isolation when it comes to the track. So I would have times where I would travel abroad and I would go to regional islands, and I would realize that tracks are not, for example, certain tracks wouldn't be totally open to the public. You just can't walk through the gate and do whatever you want. So I want to know, how isolated will the track be? Will there be time timestamps to train, just so that, let's say, to prevent certain interruptions proceeding into the track, persons going and vandalizing? It will be a new area, a new facility, so I'm aware that a lot of young persons will be curious to go in there, probably, mishandle certain things on the facility. So I want to know what precautions or what will we execute on that facility when it comes to isolation.
Well, yes, the facility will have to be fenced, because we know that even on the James Ronald Webster Park, we've had equipment vandalized over the years, and equipment isn't exactly cheap. So there must be an element of security, but whatever it is, we want to welcome athletes and users on the facility. So whatever measures are put in place, athletes for sure, and members of the public who need to have access to the track will have access to the track.
Amazing. So we can have a little bit of barbed wires on the fences?
I can't say what type of deterrent we will have exactly, but
yeah, because
as needs be.
yeah, as needs be. But I just was curious because it's gonna be a gift given, since we said it's coming from Qatar. So normally when, let's say, if the government had to sacrifice to make a track, it would be different. We would appreciate it more. Security guard here, this, that. We make measures very seriously. But when you have a gift, since, let's say, it is given, we could kind of, just not to slack on appreciating what we got. So that's why I just kind of wanted to be curious about that. Thank you.
Well, point well taken. And I'm happy that you are looking at it like that. As a young person, as an athlete, I'm very happy to see that you care about this gift, bearing in mind that it will be a very expensive gift. And we won't forget that this gift is also partial coming from the government of Anguilla. But these are things that we have to put the importance of taking care of what we have out there in the public domain. And I think that the publicity aspect of it will be very important. Yeah?
Good night, everyone. I actually had two questions, and they both kind of stole them from me, so they were answered. About the maintenance and the accessibility of the park. It sounds very good. I am very excited about the park, first of all. It's a very big opportunity for Anguilla and track and field. So the question I'm going to ask is about if you guys have any events planned for the track, not just the same events that we've been doing. Do you have any new track and field events, maybe inviting other countries, even more local events do you have planned for the new track?
All of the above.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
As a matter of fact, we had to provide information like that in the application.
And just to piggyback on your question in relation to isolation, part of the application also spoke to part of the application also spoke to the maintenance, which the question was asked, how will you prevent persons, because with tracks, a lot of persons who come in, they use the facility, they use the inner 2 lanes, which means that the inner 2 lanes, if you go over to St. Martin, I don't want to call it, but you will see that because the inner 2 lanes are used so often, the wear and tear deterioration happens very, very quickly. So you have to, as part of the application, we had to share and show how we will be preventing persons from overusing the inner 2 lanes. And then what are the security arrangements that we're going to put in place in relation to the use of the track. So I think the funders are also thinking about how are you securing our investment in you. So we have to kind of show, as you said, we have to show value on both sides.
So this sounding kind of a bit interesting now. So we have any bindings or attachments after the track is built?
No. So this is, repeat the question.
So we have any bindings or attachments after the track is built? Like, will we have anything, for example, that will probably could affect us with having a track afterwards?
No, not what. There's nothing. There's no conditions attached to the application. Application is also readily available for any of you to see online. You can go on the World Athletic site and you'll see the application and the conditions. And the conditions really relate to, number one, a maintenance plan. A maintenance plan was an absolute. You have to have a maintenance plan in order to be successful for this application. And number two, you had to put in finance. So you had to also commit to financing the track. Those are the two conditions.
Okay, so how now will we commit to financing the track?
Well, we've already committed to financing the track.
Okay, so our next question, the track. It's a type A track, meaning like 8 to 10 lanes, right?
Class 1.
Class 1, 8 to 10 lanes. 8 lanes, right. So are we aware of the track will be like an all-weather track? Because we have different type of tracks. There are tracks that has, for example, I believe it is in Nevis, I believe. It is a more latex type of track, so it's very bouncy. So that material is very costly, but it's not like an all-weather track. It can also be affected. It has to be highly maintained. So I want to know if it will be like a all-weather track or any other material that probably could be deteriorated faster than others.
So the track is a synthetic rubber track. So that material is also quite bouncy, which has its maintenance. And so just to, both to answer that question and the previous one, we also had to show how we would maintain that specific type of track in these conditions. Yes.
Anguilla doesn't rain that much, so I think we will be okay.
That's what I said.
We really excited about the interest shown here by the young athletes, but just to allay the fears, there's established maintenance standards for tracks. Like say we received from Mondo what we have to do in terms of maintaining tracks at that level. So it's not like we trying to make up things or feel around how best to maintain the track. Mondo sent us established standards for maintenance of tracks, and the main thing we need to have management in place. Some people refer to it the park, but it's not a park, it's a stadium that will be closed. Entry will be done by application. You want to train on Wednesday, you come to the group on Wednesday, train, and you follow the rules that are given to you. There'll be rules that they establish. It's not like you come in and you're doing what you feel like. If you not to use these lanes today, and you found using these lanes today, you won't come back tomorrow, okay? Thank you.
Good evening again. I'm curious on two things. I know we can't give definite answers on everything at this stage. However, I am hoping that we have a little bit more attention on sports tourism now with the track in place. With sports tourism, we are thinking about not just invitationals, but more like hosting OECS championships again. If we've done it on a grass track, then we should be more accommodating now with a proper synthetic or certified track. Concern that I have, however, is the level of our development going forward. After investing such funds into a track, what are we investing into human resources so that we can continue to develop our sports from the grassroots level up? Remember, the bigger the pool is at the lower level, the grassroots level, the more persons we have making it to the elite level. What intention or what are our plans regarding developing our grassroots level and all the levels coming up? Thank you.
Excellent question. And yep, the director is also right here. The only thing I'll add, I'll turn this over to them, but the one thing that I will add is that we've not only allocated additional monies to sports on the capital side to facilitate a track and field facility, but we're also allocating more money on the revenue side to help assist and build grassroots sports. So it's not just a one-sided approach to the development of sports. It's a holistic approach. But I'll let the director speak to the plans ahead and the president of the Athletic Association.
I have a follow-up question. More food for thought, right? In talking about, just to clarify, in talking about the human resources aspect of it, I'm also looking at not just coaching, but support services such as physiotherapy and nutritionists, you name it, that sort of thing. Thank you.
All right. So to answer the first question, I know we had gotten some extra monies for sports for next year. And a lot of us, we spoke about in the department about instead of us using that money for events, we want to spend a lot of that money on development, because we realize that a lot of times we travel to participate in events, but the work put in to travel to these events is not enough. So the department intends to work closely with Athletic Association to ensure that we can bring trainers in to work along with our coaches, to better develop our coaches. Because once our coaches are even more developed, then we can pass on better advice to our athletes. Because if the athletes ain't getting that kind of assistance from the coaches, then we will only stay at one level. So a lot of the money will be spent towards human development, towards bringing in coaches, etc. What the second question was again? That's why you got to ask me one question at a time.
So the second question, or the second part of the question, was just a bit of clarification. Support services, not just the coaching, but we're looking at strength and conditioning coaches, physiotherapy, sports nutritionists, etc.
Right. So you and I had a discussion today. I talking to me like we strangers. We had a discussion today with the idea of bringing various persons in to offer quick certifications to athletes. Also persons who might not be athletes, who might be interested in strength and conditioning coaching, massage therapists, and those other stuff, because we realize that we are short on therapists on the island, first of all, and if we can get other persons involved with massage therapy and strength and conditioning, then that would grow a whole pool, and then we'd always have people on site or on hand to assist the athletes going forward.
And just to round out some of the supporting services on the side of developing sports is we're looking at developing, as Rody calls it, the emerging elite athlete program. So that's for athletes who want to make it to that level. We're kind of trying to provide a bridge for them to be able to actually make it to the other side.
Also, to answer the question, we have a BTEC program that we're working.
Good night. Just a simple question. Knowing that now there is a facility that is underway, and you have a number of kids across Anguilla who are involved in sports, athletics, one of it, and we noticed that basketball and football basketball has evolved a long way, but football, has evolved, but basketball is now evolving, all right, taking over. However, there are some athletes in Anguilla who are, unlike some who are actually Anguillian, who has the ability and who can also put Anguilla on the map, and they have special ability in these athletes. What will the association, government, and you guys put in place for athletes who are not Anguillians, but you can see there's a special ability in these athletes going forward?
I'll call somebody else from the Department of Sports to help.
Thank you. We have reached out to the coaches and the associations to provide this information because we are already working on this. That as long as you inform us, we got it covered. Thank you. Just give us ahead of time, not when you're heading to the competition, but let us know ahead of time, and we got it. Okay.
Yeah, I want to say this call went out quite a while back, and it's the onus on the coach of the athlete, because the coach was about intimate relationship with the athlete, know what the athlete's circumstances are, and contact either the association or the Department of Sports at an early stage with that individual particular circumstances, not just that they need an Anguilla passport. We need to know what are the factors, what they need to address in that situation. So the parent, the coach, or whoever need to have this information accurately written down, so when you go to the minister responsible for, what is it again? Mr. Hodge. That aspect, we can have to know exactly what we're looking for to take to the AG office or wherever, you know? Okay, she asked me to repeat. So what I'm saying is that the coach of the athletes, whether it's track and field or whatever sport, need to bring that information for the individual to the Department of Sports or the relative association, saying why that athlete has difficulty in getting the Anguillian passport, so that when the information can be taken, a number of them can go in a block to the ministry to be worked on. And I did indicate to Roy that we should try to get that information in very early in January, so that it can be addressed shortly. It will take a period of time to sort everything out. So I'm not sure it did, but at least by mid-January it should be in.
Okay, thank you everyone for your questions. I'm not going to take up too much more of your time because I'm sure you have other plans for the evening. Unless tonight was your plan, then you're welcome to stay. You don't got to go home, but you gotta get out of here. So, but I do want to thank everyone for coming out and engaging on this topic. I hope that we've provided you with the information so that you are aware of where we are, aware of the plans of where we're going, and how we plan on getting there. So please stay engaged. As these things move forward, we want to continue to engage you to ensure that everyone is a part of the process. All right, thank you for coming out, and I'm going to close at this time. I want to thank you for coming out, and even for those who have been listening on Facebook and on radio, thank you for your time.